Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here, and 2020 was a pretty crazy year when it comes to Canadian real estate. At the start of the pandemic, you would have been pretty hard-pressed to find anybody who was predicting the kind of growth that we actually saw in most markets across the country. Even the CMHC, along with tons of Canada's biggest banks, were predicting one of the biggest housing recessions ever seen in Canada for 2020. And heading into 2021, Canadians are actually more confident that housing prices will continue to increase than they have been since all the way back in 2017. This graph actually monitors this confidence over time, and you can see here in 2020 that confidence took a little bit of a dip, but now it's resurged all the way back up to 2017 levels. But is this kind of optimism actually justified? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about 3 reasons you could see real estate go down in value in 2021. And the first reason is households defaulting on their mortgages. If households aren't able to keep up with their mortgage payments, we could see tons of people opting to list their homes on the market to avoid any instances of foreclosure or power of sale. If this happens, the increased supply of homes on the market could result in a decreasing of prices, or at the very least a neutralization of the incredible growth we've seen in most markets over the past 6 months. But is this something that is actually likely to happen? Well, to find out, we need to take a look at a couple different things. Way back at the start of the pandemic, in order to stop families from defaulting on their loans and not being able to pay their mortgages, many people were able to defer these mortgages or skip these payments for up to 6 months. But now, as of September 30th, these applications are closed to new applicants. As of July 31st, the amount of CMHC mortgages that were actively inside of this deferral program was 9% across Canada. But when we take a look at the same data for October 31st, we see that this rate has dropped all the way to 2%. The reason we see that decrease is because all of the people who applied for this deferral program way back in April, now their deferral term of 6 months has ended. So now that the mortgage deferrals have ended for most of these people, have they been able to keep up with their mortgage payments? Well, it's a little bit tough to tell right now. This chart just shows how the amount of homeowners who are unable to keep up with their mortgage payments is changing on a 3-month by 3-month basis. Blue tracks people who have not paid their mortgage in 60 to 90 days, while red tracks people from 90 to 120 days, and this is for 120 days plus. You'll see in this most recent point of data that people who are behind on their mortgage in the short term, that's gone down quite a lot, while people who are behind on their mortgage for the long term, that 120 days plus, that's actually gone up more than was expected. And you'll see that this most recent data that we have is from Q3 of 2020, so that's July, August, and September. So we don't even have the most recent data available to us yet to know for sure how these numbers have changed as of the end of the mortgage deferral program. And this information is blurred even more when you consider the effect that some of the government benefits like the CERB or the CRB could have on this sort of thing. Some homeowners could have potentially deferred their mortgages, then applied for these benefits, which they were potentially able to save to sort of help them bridge this period now that deferrals have ended. But for the people who applied for this most recent benefit, the CRB or Canada Recovery Benefit, well, if they've applied for every single month, that benefit is going to be ending as of March 29th. So we're going to have to wait and see how this is going to affect the amount of people who are behind on their mortgages and potentially forced to sell this year. The next factor that could negatively impact real estate prices in Canada is the rise of interest rates. Changing interest rates is one of the things which most clearly impacts the price of real estate in Canada. When mortgage rates go down, so do mortgage payments, and that means that somebody with the same amount of income can qualify and get accepted for a higher value loan, allowing them to buy a bigger place. This pushes more people into the real estate market because there's more people that can afford real estate, and as a result, the supply goes down, demand is up, that's increasing prices. And the same goes for the flip side of things. If interest rates go up, people can afford less house, and there's less demand for these larger houses, and as a result, real estate prices can tend to go down. But who actually has the power to control what interest rates are? That's actually the Bank of Canada, and they have a program right now that's designed to lower interest rates, and it's called quantitative easing. In its most basic terms, this program decreases interest rates by buying huge amount of Canadian government bonds. By buying up so many of the bonds, they increase the price of the bonds, which has an inverse effect on the actual interest rate that those bonds earn, or their yield. These lower interest rates tend to trickle down to other forms of lending like mortgages or business loans in an effort to increase the amount of spending that's going on in the economy. And that is exactly what the Bank of Canada did at the beginning of the pandemic. They said, oh my gosh, the economy is not looking good. We're going to lower interest rates by using this quantitative easing program in hopes that Canadians will spend more and sort of stimulate and grow the economy. So with these sort of artificially low interest rates, home buyers were able to afford more home and more people entered the market, and that's largely why in many markets we saw the price shoot up over the past 6 months. However, if the Bank of Canada were to stop this interest rate lowering program and just allow the interest rates to creep up a little bit, it would result in less people being able to afford a home and less demand. Even further, people who have variable rate mortgages or people who just need to renew their mortgages when these interest rates go up, well, they could not be able to afford their new interest rate and be forced to sell their home, increasing supply. So an increased supply, a decreased demand, this leads to lowered prices. But what are the chances that interest rates will actually go up in 2021? Well, let's listen to what Tiff Macklem, the governor of the Bank of Canada, the ones controlling this interest rate lowering program, let's see what he has to say.
COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented fall in economic activity in Canada, and the recovery will require considerable monetary policy support. Our overriding message to Canadians is that the bank will be there to provide monetary stimulus for an extended period to support the recovery and to return inflation to the 2% target. Interest rates are very low, and they're going to be there for a long time. We recognize that Canadian businesses are facing an unusual amount of uncertainty. And so we have been unusually clear about the future path for interest rates. If you've got a mortgage, or if you're considering to make a major purchase, or you're a business and you're considering making an investment, you can be confident that interest rates will be low for a long time. Low interest rates make spending and investment more affordable, and spending and investment will support the recovery. That would be our message to Canadians.
Okay, so if things continue as planned for the Bank of Canada, it sounds like interest rates are going to stay pretty low for the next couple of years at least. But with that being said, more and more Canadians are concerned about the potential for rising inflation, which is something that goes hand in hand with quantitative easing, which is essentially adding more new money into the Canadian system. If this becomes even more of a problem, there could be mounting pressure on the government to sort of start to raise these interest rates, which would have huge impacts on the real estate market. And finally, the third thing that could cause real estate prices to go down in 2021 is some other new government policy. Obviously, we don't know what kinds of rules and guidelines the Canadian government could impose in the coming year. And these kinds of rules or policies have huge dramatic impacts on the real estate market. For example, when the mortgage stress test was brought in by the Canadian government as a way to sort of make sure that everybody could truly qualify for their mortgages, we saw a decrease in home prices across the country. And the same sort of thing happened in Vancouver when there was new government policy that implemented a foreign buyers tax. Again, because of these new rules imposed by a government, whether it be federal, provincial, or municipal, we can see this affecting real estate prices in any given market. So programs like these, or entirely new programs that we haven't even heard of yet, could cause real estate prices to go down in the next year. As of right now, Toronto is already thinking of implementing some new policy in the form of a vacant property tax. But the one policy that could most heavily impact Canadian real estate prices is something that more and more real estate analysts have been talking about. And this has to do with the increasing amount of inequality when it comes to Canadians and their wealth. I mentioned it a lot in one of my most recent videos where I talk about how, as a realtor, I'm seeing how it's becoming more and more challenging for first-time home buyers to enter the market. If it becomes more and more of a challenge for young people to get into buying their first properties, then we could see an increased political will for some sort of policy to be put into place that might disincentivize disincentivize people from having multiple rental properties and maybe incentivize first-time homebuyers. There are a few different ways that something like this could be implemented, one of which is an increase in tax on properties that are not your primary residence. Who knows when a mayor, a premier, or even potentially a prime minister could get the idea to include this in their platform when election time comes around. And as a reminder, right now we're in a minority government and an election could happen at any time on the federal level. So those are the three main things that could cause real estate prices to go down in the next year. First off, we need to wait and see how many more people are going to be able to pay for their mortgage or struggle to pay for their mortgage. Second, we need to keep an eye on interest rates. We know that the Bank of Canada has said, hey, we're going to keep them close to the same, keep them pretty low, but who knows what a central bank is going to do on any given day. They could change their mind about that. And finally, the widening of existing policies or the implementation of entirely new policies could have a dramatic effect on real estate this year. But I'm wondering, what do you think will most dramatically affect real estate prices this year? Was it something I talked about, or did I miss something entirely? Either way, let me know down in the comments. And of course, if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm coming out with updates like this all the time whenever there's new information about Canadians and their money. So if that sounds good to you, make sure to follow along by pressing those buttons. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.